Our first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the May 25, June 8, and June 22 commission.
I'll move we approve minutes from May 25th, June 8th, and June 22nd.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Can I just make one little comment? Just to clarify, I don't even think the minutes need to be changed, but my comment, I think, I'm trying to still pull it out of my packet, but I think it was on page, we have a lot of pages here of the 25th. So on page 14, where there's a paragraph on my comments, just to clarify, my comment on that potential rezone on the property was that I'd looked at it the first time it came up on us, and it looked neat and tidy. And then with all of the input at that later meeting, with the citizens talking about things, and as I continued to go past it all the time in everyday passing, I would notice that it would sometimes look more like what the residents were describing. So just to clarify, I don't think exactly what I had said was clear in that paragraph, so maybe that clarifies it a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, note that you don't want to change them.
I don't need to make a change, but I know it'll be noted in this meeting.
Okay.
That because we saw it more than once, that reflected what it looked like the first time to me.
Okay, great. Item number 2, conditional use permit for farm animals at 158 North, 400 East for Teresa Slade.
Okay, this item, a request for farm animals just east of us, here in City Hall of 4th East, 158 South. The property owner has just over half of an acre, kind of a narrow but deep lot, over 22,000 square feet, which would allow, in theory, per ordinance, up to 52 chicken type animals per the ordinance. Their plan is to have maybe 5 or 6 on site. I've met on site with the applicant. They have let me know they're out of town this evening, so won't be here to represent themselves, but based on my findings and what they've got on, they have, I guess, a son keeps chickens, and gave them one because I guess his dog was starting to go after his own chickens or something, and so they took the remaining hen. It was already on site in a coop, and they were planning on doing something similar to that and bigger, and I was able to see where it was going and what it would look like and feel comfortable based on that recommending approval of the conditional use permit as proposed. Hopefully if there are any questions, I'll be able to take those and answer them. If not, I inform the applicant that it could be tabled if we feel like she needs to be here to provide some answers.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions, concerns?
No.
Did I hear you correctly and read this? 52?
Correct.
And I'm going to ask on the next one, it's the same, at least according to the staff report, it's the same size of property, but not 52. Can you just answer that? Right?
Yeah, it's based
Maybe
on the type of animal.
Yeah.
So the ordinance divides small animals such as chicken, rabbits, so many per square foot, and as your property gets larger in size, you can have more per square foot. The next one we'll see when you get to a horse, which is a big animal. You can't have any until you have at least half an acre, and then per square foot, you get far less animals on the bigger animals. So
Yeah.
that's generic, but
So 6 hens sounds better than 52 animals, but I don't have any real, I think the conditions of the existing ordinance are probably sufficient.
I don't think, with all the conditional uses that we've approved for this, we've never, ever had anybody that's maxed that out.
Right.
51.
They'd have a farm back there, chicken farm, in those areas.
We ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit for farm animals for Teresa Slade at 185 North, 400 East.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Okay, next, conditional use permit for farm animals for Kimberly Johnson at 638 South Wellington Drive.
Okay, again, another request for farm animals as stated by the chair. This one on the west side of town, in fact, right along the border of Kaysville, on the far west end of town. The property, which has just over, again, half an acre, as was pointed out, 0.52 acres, nearly identical in size. But because the request is for horses, it only restricts them to the ability to keep as many as 2 horses. Perhaps just to go in a little more detail with the previous question, you can have 1 horse per every 10,890 square feet of property that you have, as long as you've got at least half an acre. Once you hit half an acre, you can have 1 hen or chicken per every 435 feet. So that's where those numbers bump up so much on the smaller animals. I've met with the property owners on site. I believe they're here this evening. Currently, the entire property is fenced in with a vinyl fence. They plan to add an addition to that, kind of to split their yard in half, so they've got a place for the horses and a place for everything else, an additional fence, and in the future, put up a lean-to or 2 for the animals. Everything seemed to be in good order. There's plenty of distance between any of the neighboring properties, and I was told they even have experience keeping horses before, so know how to keep them clean and keep people happy. So based on my findings and visit, our staff's recommending approval as proposed. And again, I believe they're here if there are any questions of myself or the applicant.
Great, thank you.
So it says without additional conditions, lean-tos aren't conditional.
Correct. Could be if the planning commission felt that were necessary or important. It's my findings that the fence and its condition that's currently in place was pretty good for the containment, and horses often have barns and stables, but could do well without them as well. So I think if they decide to move forward and put those in, it was just my feeling that that would just be a bonus, but most of the impacts would be mitigated and okay as is.
Thank you.
We ready for a motion?
I'll move that we grant a conditional use permit for farm animals for Miss Kimberly Johnson at 638 South Wellington Drive.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Great. Next is a public hearing and request to rezone 2.97 acres of property at approximately 65 South Angel Street from RA to R115 for Ivory Homes. Chase Freebaron.
To introduce the item, so just off of Angel Street, not far south from 200 North, we have just about 3 acres of property and currently zoned RA, residential agriculture, allows for single-family homes on half-acre lots. Ivory Homes currently has the property under contract and are interested in perhaps doing something with it. And they've looked at different designs, and their preference and what they're requesting would be to do a cul-de-sac style subdivision. And in order to do that, they felt the appropriate zoning to accomplish that was the R114. Which again is a single-family residential zoning district. The 14 is for a 14,000 square foot minimum lot size, which is essentially 1/3 of an acre. The concept while we're looking at the zoning map, you can see that there's in brown R120, which is 20,000 square foot lot, single-family zoning in the area, and a lot of RA, which is the residential agricultural half-acre lot. Many of those lots are smaller than the half acre, but it is in a cluster type development where open spaces make up for that throughout the neighborhood. So you'll see the smaller lot sizes, but that's how they were able to get that. The concept that's been presented to us to kind of indicate what they would like to do if the zoning is granted and appropriate, again, shows the cul-de-sac street lining up with the street adjacent to it just across the way, with 7 lots. The 2 existing homes would remain on site. There'd be 5 new lots created. As shown, and they're just standard lots for the R114 zone, so were the zoning approved, something like this could be approved without any special approvals or conditions or exceptions to any rules. But again, the zoning would be necessary to accomplish this, so that's before the Planning Commission this evening. Again, as a public hearing, as was stated by the chair, in order to put together a recommendation to pass along to the City Council. Notice was sent out to a number of neighbors, as the City Council has requested that we do, so I believe there are many in attendance this evening that would like to share comments on it. There was one letter received to our office, which has previously been forwarded to the Planning Commission regarding this, and the applicant is here as well. So with that, I'll end my comments and open it up to the commission if you have any questions of myself or to move on to a hearing.
Great, thank
I
you.
did have a question. The three that run along Angel, will the access off their driveways be from Angel, or will they be on the cul-de-sac?
We could look at that more specifically in the subdivision process. Essentially, they would have the option of accessing it from either way. Frequently, we see in those configurations that people choose to access from the cul-de-sac. It's generally easier for them to get in and out. That could be a stipulation. Again, if the layout and zoning seems appropriate when we go through the subdivision specifically, it could be a stipulation from the commission to say no access if there's reason to do so. But to date, that's not specifically been stated. The developer may have more comments on that.
All right, any other preliminary questions before we open up the public hearing?
No.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Is there anybody here that's would like to address the commission? Please come forward, state your name, and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. It's open. Come right ahead.
My name is Paul Anderson, and I live right smack behind that proposed development. And my only comment is, I do not want a two-story house stuck up in my backyard. One story I could live with. But when I build out there, 2 stories were restricted on Precedent Street, so I can see no reason why a 2-story would not be restricted in there and make it a one single dwelling, one single floor.
Okay, great, thank you.
My name is Mark Barber. I've been associated with this piece of property since 1953. The house that's going to be demolished is the house I grew up in. We don't have any issue with the development as it exists right now, except for a couple factors that need to be known by this committee. One is that there is a drain which runs kitty corner through the lots and then turns west in. Let me show you. In order to drain this farmland, they had to put a clay drain through this area, and then turns and goes west about right here. It's in association with this fountain. It's a storm drain. If somebody cuts that along the way there, they will flood all the houses to the south of it. We currently exist 3 feet below the road right now, and we have a drainage problem if we have a lot of rain. So another issue that we don't want to see happen is we don't want these lots so steeply graded that they drain water into our yard, which gives us a really nice frog pond there. It might need some mitigation in a French drain or something to that effect. I don't know who would pay for the power, because you'd have to pump that back up to the storm drain in the road. Those are the issues that we see as the neighbors of this project. We'd like them to be considered before it goes through. We've been given word that they probably will not cut that drain. Symphony Homes did cut this drain in an experiment when they first began their development, and it resulted in flooding the crawl spaces of the 3 houses south and several others on the east side of the road. With the concentration of runoff now, because of so much sprinkling, watering people's lawns, our aquifer is at 31 inches below our foundation. So we just sit right on top of the aquifer. It's called the Zama. It's an ash seal that is there, and if you dig below that, you're in running water. So it's kind of a shallow situation. The other thing I don't know that they really explored much is we're as far back as the sewer will allow us to drain. All these houses put in went as far back as they could go, and I don't know. I know that they're going to do a cul-de-sac and drain it out to the road, but I don't know if they've really ascertained the depth of the sewer out in the road where they're at. Best way to do that is to pull up some manhole covers and put your tape down there to read what you really are looking at. And I don't know if they've gone to that extent yet. So that's our only concern. We don't want to be flooded. We would be a little bit miffed if that were to happen, because right now everything exists well and it functions well as it is. We'd like to see that maintained. We also wouldn't like to see tall houses there, because it is a situation where originally we sued the city because this house is higher than the city requirements, so is this house. When Symphony Homes started putting in their homes, we fought a war on the fence that exists west of our home, because they wanted to renege on their promise to build that fence. So we used those two tall houses to counteract their lawsuit, and they mitigated the problem for us by putting the fence in. So that's where we are, and what we understand from having lived there for the last 30-some odd years. I grew up in that little white house. They're going to knock down. I said that once.
Okay.
It is a historical home. It used to be on the tour of Kaysville City on the 24th of July. People would stop by. It's the third oldest brick house in Kaysville.
Oh.
If that means anything to anybody, but
Yeah.
it was a nice house to grow up in. Thank you.
So,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Barber,
Appreciate that.
just real quick, so on the drainage issues, just so I'm clarified, it's the runoff and the high table of the aquifer, so you're concerned both ways?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Could you speak at the
it's
microphone,
saturated
please?
in the spring.
Could you speak at the microphone, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
You can hear me.
Well, but we can't.
Just for the record, sir.
We
I
can't.
believe the whole
on
room
the-
can hear me. Go forward. You have a question?
I didn't. All I
Oh,
asked
all
is
right.
that you stand at the lectern so that we could pick you
Oh,
up on the
thank you.
audio. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And some of those issues are more, we're going to be addressed with the subdivision preliminary plat approval and development agreement. So if this does pass and this comes through again, you'll want to mark your calendar to come back when they talk about specific, the plat, preliminary final plat approval. Yeah, it just depends, we don't even know if it passes, but, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if it's even passed through the council, the developer would then have to put together documentation, and whenever they happen to submit that could be sometime down the road. So,
But another sign will go up, right, and
correct, there'd be additional notice.
noticing
as well
again.
for the neighbors.
My name is Marie Barber. I'm Mark's wife. So we live just south of the property that's being developed. My mind looks more at acreage than square feet. 14,000 square feet approximately per lot is what portion of an acre?
It's 1/3 of an acre,
A third of an acre. And most lots will be that size?
at least that size, yes.
Okay, with that size acre, or that much acreage, or that size lot, there does not have to be a common green space, is that correct? I'm just asking that question, because in the homes west of us, west and south of us, they were built on very small lots with the understanding that there was a common green space, and yet some of that common green space is public property, the park, et cetera, which at the time those were done was against the city regulations. Also, some of the green space was underneath power lines, which also went against city regulations at that time. So my question, is there enough common green space, if that's required, within that development to take care of?
Lyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but this zoning requirement doesn't require common space to be built into it, because as long as they meet the R114, the 1/3 of an acre, is that?
Correct. If the planning commission and ultimately the city council deems this zone to be appropriate, this configuration would not require common open space.
Thank you. That was my question. Do they need that, or is a third of an acre adequate to not need that?
Yeah, correct. In this situation, if the zoning's approved, a third of an acre lot is all that would be necessary without common open space.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here that would like to address this item?
My name is Kelly Pace, and I actually live in the house that'll get mowed over. I don't really have a problem with that, except I'd rather stay. But I think that if the city could allow the street that goes down the cul-de-sac to be named after Helen Barber, I think that would be respectable and proper. Maybe call it Helens Lane or whatever, or Helens Circle. I think that would be appropriate. But and if maybe we could keep the house, I'd be happy to buy it. So that's
Thank you.
all I have to say.
Appreciate that.
Hello, my name is Aaron Johnson. I've lived on Angel Street for 37 years. I live just 2 houses down from there, and so I only have a few concerns is all. So I have a concern on the property on 65 South. Let's see, a couple months ago, the log home on the corner of Angel Street and Cooper at 138 South Angel Street was rezoned to have a lot behind the home facing Cooper Street, giving it 92 feet of frontage onto Cooper Street. And that's just down this way a little bit from the picture that you guys see there. And when the city council had discussed it, they said that the property was 0.97 of an acre, and it was only 0.03 short of an acre for meeting the requirements for the RA zoning. So they had passed it, but they wanted the 2 pieces of property, if my memory recalls right, that they wanted the 2 pieces of property to stay together so that it still would fit in the RA zoning. They said it was only 0.03 short of being the RA zoning. And they didn't want the front portion to be able to be split up anymore. And so with the new proposal at 65 South, Angel Street, rezoning it to the R114, I'm concerned what the city will allow in the future. I know there are other areas that have been allowed to do this, that the zoning is similar to this down the road. There's the Hill Farms area and stuff that have allowed to do this. But I also know that the city allows for higher density on roads in the town that it deems to be main roads, which I'm pretty sure Angel is probably, it's like a freeway in front of our house sometimes. I'm sure it's deemed to be a main road. But where my concern lies is kind of, you probably not, may or may not be able to address it all the way, but where they may draw the line in the future for higher density on the main roads. For further infill on the existing homes on Angel Street. For example, homes on less than an acre that may want to divide and do a potential flag lot that may have to be zoned R114 as well. So that's kind of my concern is going from RA to an R14 zoning, what is that going to open up for, like next to my house, if somebody wants to do that and add that in? That's just my concern, I guess, because we are changing it from half acre to third acre zoning, right? So
That's correct.
So where do you live then? Is your home illustrated here?
yeah, my home's right there.
Oh,
So
north,
this is
okay.
two over from it.
Okay.
So my concern is that if by chance if the lady that lives here would want to sell and potentially put a flag lot with a home there, I don't really want that. That's my concern.
All right.
If this would allow her to do it in the future, I'm sure infills, as the city grows, infills just going to come more and more. So I don't know.
So concerned
So just
about
keep it-
precedents and
Say what?
concerned about setting a precedence.
Yeah, because as
is
soon
what
as,
you're
and that's
saying.
kind of when they did the lot on the corner there where the log home is, they did this one right here, and they said this has 92 feet of frontage, and this was 0.97 of an acre, and so they said this was just barely under, so this almost meets the requirement, but they wanted these 2 pieces to be tied together so that it still fell into the RA zoning. So as soon as you set the precedence here, but I know the precedence has been set other places as well, so I don't know if you necessarily turn it down because Hills Farm has similar issues, and but they do have green space, but I don't know what they're, I guess kind of the whatever the word is, kind of the vagueness with on main roads, higher density. I've never been able to find what actually that means. You know what I mean?
Well, this is called, Angel's called the collector street, right? That's what, it's not a major road as far as the definition. It is a major road?
Well,
It feels like one.
I mean, I can,
Said here,
Andy could probably explain that, but I have this stuff right here. We can talk about that later.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Paul Hansen. I actually own the property that we're talking about here. And thank you, I guess, first for your guys' time and consideration of this. We have looking to develop this and tried to come up with the best plan and things that would work best for what we thought for Kaysville City. And as we've talked to actually several different builders and came up with a couple different plans, our first initial plan was, and I've met with Andy multiple times about creating and just doing flag lots. And I think that was a little bit discouraged. I mean, that was a less desirable plan than the plan that we're looking at. And obviously to do a cul-de-sac here, for me, if I were that would be a much more desirable thing. The problem with doing a cul-de-sac is the infrastructure costs are substantially higher. And with that being even said, though, I still think it's still worth doing it this way. If this were not to pass, then we're going to go back to Plan B, which is to come back with flag lots. And if we do flag lots, there was some concern about height restrictions and so forth. And if it's me just doing it and not Ivory Homes, I'm not going to have height restrictions. I'll sell the lots and let people do what they want. So I think this is a great plan with Ivory, just because I think it's better for Kaysville City. We did have, and Chase will probably talk a little bit more about this, we've had extensive ground testing work done from a water perspective, and as is mentioned, the water table is high, and so those are all considerations that we're looking at and so forth. As we've also visited with the city, certainly Angel Street, the Hill Farm subdivision was approved because it was on Angel Street, and the density was allowed to be changed because of that, the busyness of the road. The city council even took it a little bit step further, and they let them go back almost a block and a half off Angel Street, where we certainly aren't doing that. If you look further to the west, there are many, many of those homes that are already a third of an acre. Yes, they came in under the open space or the cluster subdivision. I don't know how you deem that. And so there's been a precedence by Kaysville where they've allowed smaller lots, even if it wasn't on a busy street. However, this is on the busy street, and certainly we're not asking for anything different than, say, what Destination Homes got with Hill Farms. And so we'd certainly appreciate your consideration and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this item?
Chase Freebairn, representing Ivory Development, 978 East Wood Oak Lane, Salt Lake.
What was your last name again?
Freebairn.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, Planning Commission, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the comments from the audience. We do care about what we build in your community, and we're a builder, a developer that's around for the long haul, and we do care about how it shapes your city. Appreciate the comments that have been shared. I've actually done quite a bit of door knocking, just trying to get feedback from neighbors. We typically like to do that before we just turn in an application and kind of blindside people. I didn't talk to everybody. I tried to knock as many doors as I could directly surrounding the property. And granted, some people weren't home. I didn't talk to everyone. But the general feedback I got was, yes, this is probably the best design. It's better than flag lots crammed in there and kind of hodgepodge together. The cul-de-sac provides a nicer, more community neighborhood feel. And to answer your question, Mrs. Parker, yes, those lots would front into the cul-de-sac. So anyways, we look at the general plan, which says, and it's been referenced several times, that west of I-15 to allow 0 to 2 units per acre, half acres, with some higher density housing along major streets. Is this higher density than what's traditionally West Kaysville? Yes, but we feel, as been mentioned, it is a major street, and we feel it wouldn't compromise the integrity of the neighborhood or the community feel. And driving down the street at 40 or whatever the speed limit is, I don't think honestly you'd notice whether they're a half acre or third acre. You'd see the same size house. It's still a large estate home we'd put. And the feedback we got from the neighbors was they don't want larger 2 stories, and we're agreeing to limit those homes to main level floor plans. So as some type of condition, whether it's now or at preliminary plat approval, you know, you could put that condition upon us, and we would be happy to abide by that in favor of the neighbors around us and just trying to be a good neighbor. So certainly appreciate everyone's comments. And regarding the water, we just barely completed our geotechnical report, and we haven't quite had the time to digest that with our engineer. That will come later with the subdivision approval, and we'll work with Lyle and Andy on the engineering and make sure it can, you know, it will function, because we don't want water problems either. So, but certainly appreciate your opportunity. We feel this is the best plan possible for this property. We appreciate your consideration, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll close the public hearing.
I had a couple of questions, but I was going to wait until we closed the public hearing, so that's fine.
Go ahead.
For Mr. Freebaron, actually. So if, yeah, you want to come back up, I guess. So 2 questions, one being approximate square footage of these homes and approximate price point.
Sure. Pretty much consistent with the area, consistent with the homes. Most of these homes, you know, I don't know the exact square footage offhand, but most of the homes are probably 2,000 on the main and up, meaning 2,000 minimum square footage for the footprint of the home. Right. Some homes, sure, are going to be larger than that. Some may be real close to that, but that's our goal. We want to offer a nice estate rambler, no different than what you see across the street with Symphony or Richmond or Perry around us. Consistency-wise, it would be very similar.
So about 400,000.
Yeah, you know, if
not
I had
400, sorry.
And I don't know the exact numbers yet, but we don't know until we get farther down the line with our budgets, but somewhere between 4 and 5. And sure, someone could probably push over that if they wanted to.
Sure.
So are they going to be one level?
They will be one level. You know, depending on how the water, I mean, some of the neighbors in the area do have basements, some do not for obvious water reasons. You know, we'll follow our engineer's recommendation based on the water table, and we don't have those findings yet, but when we do, so there may be some subgrade square footage as well, but we just don't know that yet. So, but only 1 story above grade. So.
Actually, I've got a kind of another question regarding that. In looking at the zoning, so if you wanted to come back up, did you look at the R120 and see what you could fit in there as well?
Yeah, you know, we, you know, the R120, it's just tough. I mean, we have several half-acre lots in other parts of Kaysville and Farmington. They're tougher to sell in today's world. Millennials like myself, kind of dogging my own generation here, but we don't like to mow lawns. I'm on a 3rd acre, and that takes me about an hour and a half to mow my lawn. And you just use that as an example that from a marketing perspective, a 3rd acre is an easier sell, not only for the younger generation, but for baby boomers, for those that don't want a lot of maintenance. And there are people that want to live in West Kaysville that think a half acre is too much or 1 acre is too much, and those people need homes too. And so we did look at the half acres. We just felt that the market was friendlier towards, so it was an economic decision really based on the R113, but we still feel it provides a good community feel and a nice sized lot. Most of those lots are 14,000 square feet and above. 1 lot is actually over a half acre, so if someone does want a half acre, we have one. We feel it's a good mix. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You probably have it here, but what's the total acreage of this parcel?
2.97,
Okay.
almost 3 acres.
So if you were, I mean, averaging it out, it was a little over 18,000 square feet if you average the whole thing out. What's the smallest lot? I couldn't see this. It was pretty small.
Smallest is 14.
I think there were
14,200.
two that were in the 14 range, the rest were above that, it looked to me like.
Yeah. Probably the very smallest one is 14,000, looks like 200 square feet.
So there are probably 3 that were close to that.
Yeah, it is fuzzy. So that north lot, that far kind of northeast lot, that corner lot then, that would be, how would you access that? That one, you made a comment before that everything would be accessible into the cul-de-sac, but it looks like that one, you probably wouldn't be able to access from the cul-de-sac.
No, that home we leave. We are not demolishing that home. That home will remain, and it has current access onto Angel
Okay.
as is. So we're platting it as part of the subdivision, but we're not.
Okay, so
actually-
that's one of the 7.
That's one of the 7.
Okay.
And then you're raising the one, though, that's there, correct?
Yeah, and it sounds like there's some, I didn't know it was such a historic home. If I would have known, I probably would have asked someone in your historical department. But we're happy to move that if there's a need for it, if it's of importance to the city. We're open to if you want to preserve it somehow. So.
And probably questions for Lyle or Andy on the homes on the west side of that. Just right back there on Preston. So how long ago were those homes put in? And that, because it's, according to the zoning map, those would be, but those don't look like they are half acres with the RA. So the green space is part of the field, part of the soccer complex there?
The homes to the west were part of a cluster PRUD subdivision where they still meet the 2-unit per acre density requirement. Smaller homes and based on the ordinance, open space appropriately. The ordinance does allow open space to be conveyed to the city if the city chooses to accept it. So in this case, the soccer park, which is this area, was a good portion of the open space. They have other open spaces, areas in other locations as well.
Okay.
Have we done anything with a historic home like this beside the one at the park here in town, Heritage Park? Is there?
No, we have a ordinance for historic homes that allows them to be removed as long as they're documented first.
And I think that only applies to the Old Town
I think
Kaysville.
it does.
Can I just make a comment? I would invite you to come and look at this home, even though we have put some major amounts of renovation. To move that home would never happen. The bricks that are inside of that thing are crumbling. Yeah. You put a little bit of water on them and they're gone. And so that was much consideration on my part because we put tens of thousands of dollars into fixing up this home to make it livable. Just economically would make no sense, and this is really probably the best plan.
Thank you.
No, to me, it sounds like developers answered some of the questions, kind of the risk. I'm new in the neighborhood down there too. I recognize a lot of your faces. Some of the concerns we've heard were 2-story homes. The developers answered that, going with the Rambler. Water issues is a big concern that Mr. Barber brought up. Sounds like they've done the geotechnical survey and analysis of that. So that obviously would be incorporated into anything that, if we approve anything, that would be into it. The cul-de-sac is a nice fill versus flag lots. Flag lots actually, if they're done properly and in the right area, can can be nice, and I think we've approved some of them. At Precedence, one thing that we've tried to stress before from a commission standpoint is we look at everything on an individual case and basis. We don't really look at precedents. It seems that it always comes up that, we don't want to set a precedence, or there has been a precedent set. I think one thing that we try to do is to really look at the individual proposal and look at how it conforms and how it fits based on the merits of that proposal alone. And we really try to stay clear of other precedents. So, and I would hope that future commissioners would do the same thing. So I'm not worried or concerned about a precedence that has been set or may have perceived to have been set or a future precedence, because we do try very carefully to look at them on an individual basis. But personally, it would be nice to do the R120, but when you do look at the surrounding, that's one of the things we look at, the surrounding neighborhood, what's backing it, what's around it. To me, it does seem to fit, given that the developer actually does those things that he said he's going to do. And I know Ivory has a great reputation and does what they say they're going to do, especially if we put that into any conditions, into a development agreement as well. Those are just some of my thoughts.
I agree with the precedent comment, although if I'm playing devil's advocate, on one hand, we don't have to follow precedent. We've talked about this before in other matters. We're not like a court that is bound by something. We can do it. We can evaluate each one on their merits, but at the same time, this project to the west is weighing on our decision because of what they did there. So it's kind of the way you define precedent, because these size of properties are, at least what I'm hearing and what I kind of am thinking is, look, well, how big are those? They can't be too much. They're relatively close to some of the lots that will be in there, and so in some respects that is kind of precedent.
Yeah, the way I look at it is that's why I was wondering if the Angel Street Park, the complex was put into it, because they are smaller lots. And aside from a precedent standpoint, when we look at, does it conform to the neighborhood and the surrounding areas, based on that, it does. So I don't know if that's necessarily precedence, but we've created a situation in the past that makes it conform.
Mm-hmm.
So it's debatable whether that's a precedence or conformity.
Well, yeah, and again, one of the things that makes me lean in favor of this is I personally don't think that it will drastically change the character of the neighborhood. So I think inherent in that a little bit is one of the concerns I think I heard from at least one or two people was, if we've already done it here. If we do it here, then we'll do it here, and we'll do it over here. You know what I mean? That kind of precedent gets set. But what I think is, again, it doesn't, in my opinion, change the character of the neighborhood, because there are so many other lots that are of similar size. I think the homes are not going to look different. That's what it sounds like. And I think that this project is in accordance with the general plan, this proposal, because the general plan says, and I think somebody quoted it, it says, I'll just look at it, west of I-15 allows 0 to 2 units per acre with some higher density along the major streets. So I guess two things that that weigh in favor of this in my mind there is, number one, and we've said this before, but just to clarify, 1 to 2 units per acre does not mean half-acre lots. It means you can get creative with the sizing of the lots as long as you don't go below the minimum lot size in any given zone. You could have a few quarter-acre lots, a few half-acre lots, a few acre lots on a property of several acres. It doesn't mean half-acre lots. And so I think there is at least one half-acre lot, if I heard correctly and if I looked at the number in this proposal, and it's along a major street, which is, yeah, it is defined in our code there's a major street plan which defines several streets. This one is a collector street, if I believe so. Is that correct, Andy? Angel Street is a collector street. But it's on the major street plan, correct. So collector street is a subset of a major street. And so, you know, that was sort of a rambling way of saying I think this makes sense. One question I had, though, is why we've had a lot of concerns that are more typically addressed at the preliminary plat level. Why wasn't a preliminary, I mean, this feels a lot like a preliminary plat / rezone discussion. We really should only be looking at the rezone questions or the rezone elements, and we've blurred the lines a lot, maybe even more heavily onto the preliminary plat questions.
Because we've incorporated this.
Right.
Which we're referencing the entire time.
I mean, that might as well have been a preliminary plat.
Right.
So.
That was a question that I had too. I'll wait till you're done.
I'm done. You can go.
To echo my two other commissioners, I do feel as though from the 6 folks that spoke, the issues that they had, the concerns that they had, were addressed. No 2-story homes. I think that's a nice touch. Have more of a Rambler type feel and things along those lines. There was one thing that I kind of did shake my head at, though, was the landowner saying that if this doesn't go through, he's going to open it up and allow the buyers to essentially do whatever the hell they want to and build however tall stories they want to, and maybe put it into flag lots. So, I mean, I think that probably could have gone unsaid, but I do agree, though. I mean, based on some of the emails that I've read with this and some of the concerns that we've dealt with this, and even the concerns that we've had over the years with West Kaysville and the 2-acre or the half-acre lot debate, in nowhere in the general plan, I mean, 0 to 2 homes per acre, like Commissioner Sunloff said, does not explicitly state half-acre lots, which is, I think that's a common misconception at times that, they think, well, we think as a community that, well, they're half-acre lots. Well, it's not really. It's, like you said, the builder and the developer do have some leniency on how they want to do things and how they want to, subdivide things. Would I like to see this, with one of these lots taken out of here? Yes, I would. I did not realize going into this today. I did go out to the property and I did take a look at things. I did take a walk around on the front of the road, but I did not realize that the one home on the north, what would that be, the northeastern corner of this, is staying there. So essentially, we are looking at, instead of dividing this 7 ways, we're dividing this 6 ways. So, I mean, that is a little bit easier for me to digest than, the initial, well, we're going to get as much as we can out of this because really all we're concerned about is the bottom line. So I do like the layout of it. I think that the cul-de-sac does add a nice touch to things. Obviously, Kelly Pace, having the street named after the barbers and that and stuff, that's probably something that the developer and the landowner and all that stuff can talk. I mean, I think that'd be a nice touch, to be honest with you. But so those are my concerns. I mean, I think all in all, I think it does fit with the aesthetic of the neighborhood, of the surrounding neighborhoods. I mean, heck, these lots here are actually bigger than, I don't have a pointer, but from, what we're looking at in a lot of the RA area there on Haywood Drive and Jackson Street and Preston Street. I mean, yeah, these here are going to actually be, equal in size or even a little bit larger than what's available, what's in this area all here. So, anyway, those are my concerns.
What's the minimum lot size in the RA? Do you know off the top of your head?
Which?
In RA, what was the minimum lot size?
It's full half-acre.
Okay.
R120.
So it's like minimum lot size, except when you can add in a massive park,
Right,
basically.
which is not even adjacent.
So
to
what's
half
the real small? Like, what is the baseline minimum lot size?
Under the cluster subdivision, there is no minimum.
Okay.
In some cases, it might be the pad of the home. We have a few
Yeah.
subdivisions of that nature where the pad of the home is the lot, which is, 3,000 square feet or maybe even less. But
Okay, yeah.
again, the PRUD cluster subdivision is based on density and open space. R120 has been considered as meeting the 2-unit per acre density in West Kaysville. As you can see, it's been reasonably well accepted out there at this point. We came up with the R1 LD zone a few years ago to give a little more variety and without requiring the open space. So that one says 2 units per acre, no open space required. We did set a minimum on that of 12,000 square feet.
Okay.
But it's based on density again with that 2 unit per acre is kind of the threshold number that we've been looking at on most of those ordinances.
I will add one more thing too, that I was kind of surprised based on the attendance that's here this evening and the propensity for this issue to kind of, to proliferated and caused a little bit of an uproar and a ruckus and that and stuff. I was really surprised that with the folks that did speak, that there wasn't any, there wasn't a line to the back of the room with people, slamming their fist down and saying, you know what, I don't want this, and I don't, I'm in disagreement with this, and, we want it as is, or we want it, I didn't hear any of that at all. Like I said, the issues that were brought before us this evening were essentially, and nothing against you, Mr. Hansen, but you as the landowner, you have 5 other residents, and, I think that all of their issues were taken care of and addressed by Ivory Homes and the landowner. So.
And the ones that weren't or haven't yet been adequately or sufficiently addressed or whatever, one of them specifically in my mind is stormwater will be addressed in the plat process.
Right, which is not tonight.
Right.
Right. So that's where I'm at.
I have one last question. What notice was given on this? Was it back to our typical post the sign, or did we do the 500-foot mailing on this one?
Property owners within 500 feet of this were mailed a notice on this one, in addition to a posted sign and website and other places that we post notice.
So is that, just out of curiosity, so I don't have to ask this question in every rezone, is that the unwritten rule that the city's following until the ordinance gets formally adopted mandating that?
Correct. The direction from the council is to do that. Our understanding on rezone applications, so we've been doing that on all of them, including the items before us this evening, and are in the process of formally having that written down in some format.
And so, just to clarify, that is mailed letters to property owners within 500 feet?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion?
I just wanted to thank all the people who spoke and had very good comments and good discussion, good input for us, and done in a very nice manner.
Ready for a motion?
I'm just looking at the possible motions on the staff report. We haven't talked about a development agreement if we feel like one is necessary. Because one never came up, I'm guessing we don't feel it's necessary.
No.
Well, I would only say if there was, the public didn't want to have the 2 stories and the developer says they're happy not to have 2 stories, then I'd say put it in so that we lock in what we've understand to be the context.
Put that in as one of the conditions in the development agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I don't think yes, that is a good idea, with the 2-acre homes and having it be compartmentalized to, single limit homes to main level homes, or limit the building to a main level home and that. But again, though, you know, this is not a preliminary plat. This is the rezone here, which, I mean, we don't want to get too far off in the weeds with a building development or a building agreement when we're merely changing the zone, so.
But we've done that in the past.
Well, yeah, we have.
Recently.
But usually it's with a preliminary plat
Attached to it.
on the agenda item.
Right.
Because if we pass this without that preliminary plat, and say they decide not to do it, it's rezoned and they could sell it, another developer could come along.
Sure.
But the question is, can we
So-
address a development agreement at the preliminary plat level?
I think we could.
Yes, you could. but
Okay,
as-
so that
as
answers the question.
Mr. Bullock stated.
For me.
If this property gets rezoned to R14, and this particular developer goes away, somebody comes in with an R14 plat that meets all the city requirements, we have some obligation to approve it. It'd be very difficult to
They could
apply.
put in two or
That's
three
why I
stories.
Additional
think we ought to put the
conditions at that
condition
point.
now.
Okay.
Well, but
So-
approve with
Subject to,
a development agreement.
That limits.
or just the provisions.
story.
Main Street or main level homes.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is if we want to put the development agreement condition in now, that's fine, but we don't have to, at least what I'm hearing.
We don't have to if you're okay with later on another developer coming in and putting in 2 stories.
Well,
I mean, if
Yeah.
that's important, let's put it in now. If it's not
Yeah.
important, then.
You don't have
I
to do
agree.
it necessarily with development agreement where the
Just a condition.
issues seem pretty straightforward. You can approve it subject to certain conditions.
right, yeah.
Don't we
Sense.
usually then do a rezone with a preliminary plat, or have we?
We've done that frequently.
Yeah,
I think in this case, where the rezone was probably less than guaranteed, they probably didn't want to go to the extent of a full
Yeah.
preliminary until they knew they could do that.
that's what I was thinking.
I mean, we've had this discussion before. I guess I might have stood on my soapbox. In some respects, the way it should be done is this way, in my opinion. It should be look at the rezone wholly in itself. It's nice sometimes to tie a plat to it. I do get that, but it blurs the line sometimes too much, in my opinion. And so sometimes just a pure rezone question is nice. So,
As a standalone issue.
right.
In this particular case, if I didn't know what the concerns were and what the commitment from the developer was and what it's going to be, my opinion would probably be different.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
So I think in this case, it was actually good where, some situations, maybe in an undeveloped area where there's a lot of open land and there's more options, it's good. But I think for me personally, in this case, it was beneficial for me and that's why I think we need to put that condition on it, even though it is just a rezone.
Well, then I say we do it.
Let's do it,
so.
yeah.
You want to make the motion?
I think Gary was filling
Oh,
a
you
motion.
started it.
But you like it, yeah.
I will do it.
Go for it, Lorene.
All right. I move that we recommend approval for the rezone of 2.97 acres of property from the residential agricultural to the R114, which is the single-family residential zoning district for Ivory Homes, Chase Free Barron at 64 South Angel Street, with the condition that the homes built in this subdivision will be limited to single-story homes. Was that the one we wanted?
I think it's, I'll second. Oh, go ahead, Benny.
You got it? Aye.
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 Great, thank you. Thank you for your participation in that. Next is a public hearing and request to rezone 2.84 acres of property at approximately 701 South Main Street from R18 to HCU Healthcare for Dave Whitaker.
Okay, again, as introduction to the item, another rezone request of nearly 3 acres, 2.84 acres, as was stated. This property is on the south end of Main Street, at least the south end of Kaysville City's jurisdiction, just a little bit north of Nichols Road. And the property, as you can see, has frontage along Main Street, but is adjacent to, as you can see in the zoning and here on the map, single-family residential areas. The request for the HC zoning district is with the intent, as we've been made aware, for the purpose of an assisted living center. The HC zoning district is pretty specific in its purpose. It accommodates only 4 uses, all as permitted uses: a residential facility for a person with a disability, assisted living centers, nursing care facilities, and buildings accessory to those 3 uses. The applicant, if you want to take a look at the zoning map, you can see the R18 primarily around the property. A little difficult on the screen, but highlighted here in yellow. Has 8,000 square foot lot, zoning surrounding it. The Botanical Center and the Research Gardens are to the west across the street. There is also on this, you can see the HC and an existing assisted living facility just down the street, slightly on the west side of Main Street. Similar to the last, the applicants provided kind of a concept plan of what they anticipate it might look like. Again, this kind of gets muddy in the water of, we're not looking at the subdivision plat. In fact, we're only considering this portion of the property, not those as far as the rezone is concerned, but to give the commission an idea on what the consideration may mean. The applicant is here this evening, and it is a public hearing, so unless the commission has additional questions of myself currently, I'll close my remarks and pass it back and to move forward with the agenda.
Great, thank you. Are there any preliminary questions before we open the public hearing? No. Okay, the public hearing is now open on item number 5 with respect to the rezone of 2.84 acres. Is anyone here to address that item? Going once?
First, thank you again for letting us approach you tonight on this issue. Everybody's bragged about how long they've lived in Kaysville. I was born here, lived here for 62 years. Live currently on 650 South, just one lot in from where this will be.
Would you state your name, please?
Alan Anderson.
Thank you.
Sorry. My only concern is living in Kaysville for as long as I started in the JCs when I was 18 years old and was in the JCs for about 15 years. Consequently, through those 15 years, I rubbed shoulders a little bit with a few mayors, a few councilmen, and was always told that south of Davis High there would never be any commercial buildings. And I'm now told that these are not considered commercial buildings. These assisted care facilities are not considered commercial buildings. But my concern is if they are, which I'm told they're not, but if they are we setting a precedence if the USU decides to sell all that property? Or are we going to have a Maverick store on the corner of Burton Lane and Main Street someday? So I'm just concerned about a precedence being set on the south side of town for commercial buildings. And I've been told for years that wasn't going to happen, and now we've got a little assisted care facility down there. Now we're going to have another one, and that's my only concern. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dwight Bird, and I live in the property right here, this corner, adjacent to the lot that we're discussing. And I understand this is just a planning hearing, and so I do want to, and I actually oppose this change in zoning. I believe, from what I understand, there is a current zoning for this property of a certain size residential lot, and I don't see any reason to change that. Within the boundaries of Kaysville, we do have areas that are healthcare areas. We've got development near the north of 200 North, where we've got a Tanner Clinic facility and an IHC facility. There's open space near that if we need this type of facility that we can put those other kind of adjunct healthcare facilities. We do have 2 here close by. The one that's further north on Main Street, that property has been kind of a disaster since I've lived here since '98. Nothing seems to stay there that long, and it's a, I guess I wish them luck with their healthcare zoning. So anyway, a couple of points that I'd like to make. Bringing a commercial enterprise, which this is, it will be a money-making business for somebody to own and operate this, and it needs to stay afloat. It needs to make a profit, or it can't thrive, it can't survive. And putting that in a pure residential area. And, you know, how do we ensure the long-term viability 10 to 30 years for a facility like this? Some other points. On this same planning agenda tonight, we had another proposal to rezone almost 3 acres. And if they're coming from an agricultural to a residential, would there be any chance of just switching this, leave this residential the way it is, and consider putting a healthcare facility on that other plot? And I know we've already closed and we've made a motion on that, but I'll throw it out there all the same. And then we wouldn't have to change this zoning. Some of the other concerns I'll go ahead and voice. So I guess the main point I'm making is that there is already a good applicable zoning for this that matches what's there, and I would like to oppose a change. I would like to leave it the way it is. That said, I would like to make some other points and maybe ask some other questions. One of them is, what would the address be for this facility? Would it be a Main Street address, or would it be? And the reason I ask is because the access of it, if it is kind of a commercial facility and it has access off of Main Street, that's one thing. But if it does require access off of the back, then that's a whole different story, because now you're going to increase a different type of traffic through this neighborhood, which is right now all dead-end streets and young children frequently park in the street. So that would change the nature of the use of that property. If the address is on Main Street and it has access from Main Street, then that's probably more permissible. But I do understand that there are some limitations on how frequently you can cut into a street that has the designation that Main Street has. So that's one comment. Another comment is nighttime lighting. Right now, when people go to bed in this neighborhood, the lights go off. It's dark at night. I like to look at stars at night, so I would want to ensure that any lighting that's associated with this facility is of the type that points down, that doesn't shine out in neighborhoods and protects the dark space at night. And then, if you'll notice, could you flip to the next page? Next page, the one that has the plot plan. Now, my primary concern is what I understand that lot towards the top of the area that we're talking about, that has been described to me as an employee parking lot. And my house, as you can see, is the house right next to that. And then our house sits north on our lot, so our backyard is the side yard, which faces this. And what would really reduce the quality of life for our yard is to have up to 16 vehicles changing spots at shift change, because these are 24-hour facilities. 3 times a day, having up to 16 cars come in there, turn off their engines, you get the odor of the antifreeze and that. Headlights in the evening coming right into my backyard, slamming door 30 feet from my open windows at whatever hour they have the shift change. And so to me, that's an adverse impact to quality of life that affects me more directly than anybody else represented here on the plan. So I would like to see some mitigation stipulated for that. Snow removal, I'd want to make sure that there was some accommodation for a place for snow removal if they're going to not push that lot onto our property or adjacent to our property. And then the other question that I had or comment that I wanted to make has to do with the grade. Right now, our backyard is on the same grade as the field, which is fine the way it is, but if construction were to raise the grade there, that would make our property a pond, which I'm all for ponds, actually. I like wet spaces. But we would have to do something to accommodate that in our backyard. And those are the comments I have.
Great, thank you very much.
I'm Don Woodbury, live up on Cherrywood Road, just up above this area. In my profession, I get around to most of the assisted living facilities in multiple counties, and there's a variety of architectural design that you see in these facilities. Some are more industrial looking and not nearly as nice to look at as others. And I don't know if there's probably no regulation that, hey, if you're going to build, you got to have it be at this aesthetic level, because that's, I guess, capitalism. But I would just like to make a request that somehow we look at that. If indeed a facility is approved, that it's something that is nice to look at, because there's a big variation in how these facilities look from the streets that I see. And you're welcome to go look at a bunch of them. There's some that are not very good looking. And we'd like to have it, match what is around us, which is pretty good looking properties generally. So, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Red. I recently moved back to the area from Kansas City, Missouri. And coming from there, land was really open and available. And so I'm really sad to see the open areas disappear around here. But I also am one of the reasons that it is because we built a home. So that kind of happens, and I understand that. When we built our home, we are the home just up above this area. One of the things that attracted us to this area was east side of Kaysville. It was easy access for my husband for his job, but also the beauty of that part of the area that you have some trees and some different things there. And then with the desire to have families around. And so when we built there, it was our understanding that this property below us was zoned for homes, and so I'm against changing it, and I would love to see more families be able to enjoy this side of Kaysville.
Thank you.
My name is Robin Tolman. Can you hear me? No. My name is Robin Tolman. Robin. And I live off from 650, which is just north of there. And I think we need to remember that this is Dave Whitaker's property, and he gets to choose what he does with that property. And he has taken the neighborhoods into consideration by causing the least impact on all of the neighbors. Some, of course, are going to be impacted a little bit more than others, but the rendering that was submitted of the building, that's not a set in stone. That could be changed. That parking lot could be somewhere else. Those things are still up in the air. I'm for it. And I think that as far as the options that are available there, I think that's as good an option as any other. My understanding is that there could be up to 20 plus houses put in there if they didn't do this, and the impact with this healthcare facility will be much less than that. Also, I have seen some of these buildings that Mr. Whitaker builds, and they are nice buildings, and he does really nice work, and I don't think it's going to be a detriment to the looks or the aesthetics of the neighborhood at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jared Olson. I live on 650. I approve of this zoning change with two concerns. One is traffic. I have 6 kids. That's why I chose to buy where I bought. Dead-end streets gives them a little bit more safer area. And the second one is rezoning it to medical, maybe this assisted living doesn't work out, they sell it to somebody else and they make either a rehab center, someone, rehab from addictions, or maybe a behavioral health or mental facility. Those are the two things that I don't want to see in my neighborhood. There are other places zoned for that, and that would be appropriate for there. As long as it is an assisted living center, I will be for it. But the other thing is the traffic flow. I believe that we do have an issue with traffic flow, and that will need to be addressed at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name's Matt Red. My family just built a home right here. So my frustration that I'd like to voice is with the timing of this. So we literally closed on our home within the last 2 months that we had built new. And this whole neighborhood had just been opened up to be sold under the impression that this was residential land. So typically when land is developed, the zoning is done before they start selling homes and before they start selling lots, and what's going to be coming in. And if this is something that was in the works for years, it's really frustrating to me that this was not something that was brought out before they started selling homes and building homes right adjacent to this. So, my main frustration is, we picked an area that we wanted to be in under what we felt that it was going to look like in 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now. And I think these are things that could have been much more transparent to the people that were looking in the area. Because I personally would rather see homes. I don't have anything, I've heard good things about the builder and the landowner, and I think if things are done right, it could probably be fine. But my frustration is that, this was definitely not transparent to people that are buying lots right there, right now, and building homes. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
I'm also a recent Kaysvilleite. I don't even know what you call yourself or ourself now, but I'm also in this little dirt mound right next to the Reds.
Why don't you tell us what you call yourself?
I don't have any idea now.
No,
My
just
name's
your
Greg
name.
Hill, yes. I don't know what I'm calling myself either.
Greg.
I came in here really opposed to it, and I'm still, I'm like Matt and Sarah in that I feel like we bought under the premise, and I was actually sold by the salespeople that this is wonderful because there's no through roads, and there aren't going to be through roads, and that had a big bearing on building in our area, and we love the area. We love Kaysville. We're just concerned about this development, which we thought really would be a farm for, and I think Dave did too, for a while. Things have changed, obviously, on that, and he wants to make some changes. I personally would rather have it be single-family homes. But with that said, if it's something that you approve, I really, after talking to Dave tonight, I really do feel he'll build a good-looking facility. And I also believe that he's got some ideas that we would like to address with you on how to fix the through roads. There's some ways to put some cul-de-sacs in where we don't have to have the traffic coming in from Main Street up through the neighborhoods, and that he felt that UDOT would be able to allow access to his property from Main Street. Now, if those things come into play, I think that would have, a lot of us would have a different feel about it depending on what it looks like. But anyway, I just wanted you to know I really like it here, and we did come under a certain premise, and it was zoned a certain way, and we felt it was going to stay that way. So, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lisa Purdy, and I live just directly behind the Whitaker's home. We are their backdoor neighbors. And we also just recently moved in last fall. and built with Symphony Homes. And we too feel like we were misguided by telling us that, you know, that this was how it was going to be and that we would have some open space. That was the reason we moved, actually. We love the views on both directions. And I understand that this will be developed, and I get that at this point. I would just like to say if it is going to be an assisted living place, we would really, really hope that we can work with the developer on that to not have through streets that will run through our neighborhood and completely change the dynamics and the feel of our neighborhoods. Not only on 650 South, but up our street, Whisper Creek also. We would just ask that if this is rezoned, that we can mitigate as much of the problems as we can with all that increased traffic into our neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Aaron Hickson, and I just sold a home on Flint Street and 200 North. We're building another home in Kaysville because we outgrew our home. I tried to get my wife to add on, but she wouldn't let me. So anyway, I grew up in Bountiful, and I lived in a house that was about the distance of these other people, where there was a developer that wanted to come and put in an assisted living facility, and there was a lot of people that were concerned. I was too young to care at the time, but then later in life, my wife's father needed to be in a facility like this, and I can tell you it was wonderful. It was built, and it was wonderful having him there, and we could walk down there and spend time with him. The developer did a good job of making sure that it blended into the community as much as you can blend in something like this. Also living on Flint Street and 200 North, we moved in 10 years ago, and there was a lot of open space there. And since then, we have Smith's, we have Maverick, and we have other neighborhoods. And I guess I might kick against the pricks, but I like change. I think we progress, and I do like that we have a mixed community where we can, I can now walk to the gas station and get gas when I mow the lawn, or get a soda when I'm thirsty, and I can go to the grocery store. Now traffic has picked up, and that was a concern. Not so much for me, even though I have young children. So I wanted to say that I support this as long as the concerns are that it does have the aesthetics of the surrounding community, and it blends in well as much, again, as you can. And it doesn't look like a commercial building, but more of a home feel, if you will. So that's my 2 cents.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Mark Rushton, and I live on 650 South. And when I was 14 years of age, my parents moved to Kaysville. And other than 8 years where I lived in the terrible town of Layton, I've spent the rest of my life here in Kaysville. When I moved to Kaysville, there was one light in Kaysville. That was at 2nd North and Main Street, and it was flashing yellow along Main Street, and it was flashing red on 2nd North. So the character of Kaysville has changed dramatically since I moved here at the age of 14. This is going to change the character of our neighborhood considerably. I'm in no way opposed to Brother Whitaker doing as he pleases. I think that's a right that has not been given to a lot of people. They've been corralled into doing what the community around them wants them to do, and they have no control over their own property. So if this is his decision, I'm in agreement with it. However, I am absolutely opposed to that parking lot in the back on the northeast corner. That greatly is going to affect my quality of life, to say nothing about the quality of life of the Bird family. And that should not be there. We should not have access with commercial vehicles, large commercial vehicles, running through our residential community 24 hours a day, emptying garbage, delivering medical supplies, oxygen, food supplies, any hour of the day. And that's the only opposition I have to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was about 4 years ago that I was in the same position as Mr. Whitaker. I'm the owner of the villas at Bear Creek. We went through this process. It was lengthy approval.
Could you state your name, please?
Oh, yeah, Scott Hansen.
Okay.
Sorry about that. And one of the things that when we built this facility, there was a lot of disagreement in even allowing us to do the healthcare facility. And I think most of the neighbors have realized that what we've done there has been a good thing, because our community needs these facilities. I don't know if it needs lots of them, but we need them because our community is aging and they want to stay in their community. They don't want to have to go to Layton or Centerville or other places. They want to stay home if they can. Most of them want to stay at least in their community. So I think the only thing I have is as a developer, and the other thing I was going to say, it's not as profitable a business that everybody perceives. I'll tell you, in 2.5 years, we have not made the projected profits that we expected. There are costs and government regulation that we've had to do, and it has not been as we projected. So, I mean, that's just stating the facts. But I do love to see property developed properly and enhance the neighborhood. Our building, I think, enhances the neighborhood, but it costs a lot more to enhance the building. And some of those things, we did because we wanted the neighborhood to look good. We did not want it to stand out like a sore thumb. And the lighting, of course, is an issue at night, and we have to have our lights off. They're on automatic timer, and they turn off at 11 o'clock. That was one of the conditions the city put on us. One of the conditions we had at the time is they would only limit us to a type 1 facility. And then we had to come back and lobby for a type 2 facility, which we also had incurred more expense through fire and other upgrades. But I would say, if that's the case, I think all I would like to see is have it be fair. Whatever the conditions that were put on our building, I would want those same conditions put on the existing building. And I think that's a reasonable request.
Great.
Can I ask some questions from him, or do we want to ask him afterwards? Because I'm just curious. I think it's a relevant property. It's up to you.
You want to wait till the...
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay.
I may ask you some questions later, after the public hearing.
Just 1 second. There's someone else coming over there. Go ahead. You.
My name is Dino Pasqua, and I am also a new resident of the lots up on Whisper Creek. And to me, when this all first started, it was more of a moral issue. We purchased these lots. We're new to Kaysville. We came from Layton, so we're transitioned over, and we love it. And we moved here because of it was a dead-end lane. It was all zoned residential. And I was really anti the assisted living when I first heard about it. But the more I hear, and we've talked, and I hear the plans of how nice it's going to be, I'm still on the fence. So I guess what I really want to say is I'll let the city decide what's best for Kaysville to go there, but I am strongly opposed to the road going through, the straight-through road, because of the increased traffic it'll bring, not just because of whether it's homes, whether it's an assisted living center. That road going through from 650 connecting to Whisper Creek will drive tons of increased traffic, which is what I'm truly opposed to. And I guess the other thing I'm opposed to is if it did set precedents where if the land across the street was to ever sell, it could become commercial or a hospital, or setting that precedence. But my main issue is the road, so I'm hoping even if it does become assisted living, that we can come back to you and address the road. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jen Beard, and I actually live, I'll show you if I can find it. I live right by the birds, so my property is adjacent to this property right here. Most of my concerns are actually repetitive of what's already been said, but I feel like I need to voice it anyway. But probably my biggest concern is the traffic issue. I know that will, like the plans have been to have that as a through road there, but I do have concerns as a parent and as a neighbor of the excess traffic. I'm curious, I don't know have enough knowledge of this, but I'm curious if they're, like the contact that's been made with UDOT as far as the main street, if there's been traffic studies and stuff like that done, because currently coming out of 650, when I need to get my little boy up to football at Nichols Road, I've had to sit there for 20 minutes to make a left-hand turn as is. So just the impact that having that extra traffic come out onto Main, I would just hope that studies were done to make sure that that impact is not gonna be adverse. And then also, I do too have an issue with the parking lot, only because of like trash cans and stuff like that, and with it partially coming up to my yard. I really I've gone back and forth on whether it should be neighborhood, if it should be assisted living. I don't feel like I know quite enough to make that judgment yet. I would definitely I know some of the people that live up higher like the idea of having the homes built in there, but where my property is, I feel like maybe because we have access to Main Street, the homes would increase traffic in my end, maybe not so much on their end. So that's why I'm a little still up in the air on what it would be. I think that if that facility did not have access through our neighborhood and only had Main Street access, I think I'd be 100% comfortable with the assisted living there. So I don't know how that has to go in consideration. And then as another neighbor said, I also don't know if there can be a stipulation that, I don't know how sustainable this is over the years, but in case it wasn't sustainable, because I've been told it's a 60-bed place, and if we're not able to fill those 60 beds and they're not making money, are they gonna end up selling? And then is there a stipulation that it sticks to just an assisted living and not some of the other options? So that would be my only other concern, but I really like what was said on the other property out in West Kaysville. Somebody threw out an as-is. I would love for it to stay. I'd love Whitaker's to stay there and the field to stay there, and that's my vote, is as-is. But anyway.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to?
It was Jen. Thank you.
I'm 69. I don't remember that long.
Hi, my name is Todd Johnson. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Symphony Homes. I'm also building my personal home right here. I have concerns with a rezone here, the precedent it sets for the other vacant pieces along Main Street, and the issue it gives for people considering to buy from us and other builders and developers in Kaysville. We've been safe for years to know that Kaysville will stand by its zoning. We've been able to put homes, I think some of the finest neighborhoods in Kaysville in, knowing that we wouldn't have commercial zone dropped in our backyards without proper buffing and without proper thought behind it. Without the traffic being mitigated, the biggest issue by far, without absolute proof that you can maintain traffic on Main Street with 2 entrances to this property, I do not believe you can grant this zone. If you grant the zone and the proposed plat won't fit and the traffic reroutes through all these neighborhoods and things, I think you're doing the people investing here, the people who have invested, and the future people who will live here, a great disservice. The number of traffic, number of cars, the type of vehicles that will access a multi-bed assisted living is far greater than that of a R18 zone, as I'm sure everyone here is aware. My position is until those things are addressed, mitigated, and handled, that we do not grant the zone, that we leave it the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just had a question. Is the traffic flow consideration going to be at another meeting?
Yes, because right now, and I've
This
been
is
meaning,
just
I've been meaning to
facility.
say this for a while. Right now, this right here is the only issue that's before us this evening.
Okay.
We're
I'll
talking
save-
about a rezone of 2.84 acres.
Okay.
That's it,
I'll save
rezone,
my
right.
comments for later then.
Okay.
My name is Dave Whitaker. I think enough people have been looking at me expecting me to say something, so I might as well do it. There was a time when between Nichols Road and the high school, there were 3 homes, so which one was the one I lived in? That included the area from Main Street up to Highway 89. So people that feel like they've been intruded on, I know where you're coming from. Every home there has felt like an intrusion to me throughout my lifetime. As my wife and I thought about what to do with this property, and by the way, I would add, she purposely planned a trip out of town because she can't stand this much punishment. So she left me here all alone. But her answer every time was, oh no, Dave, you can't do that to these guys, okay? So we have already talked to people and done studies on which of our options, anywhere from apartment buildings to church house to what is zoned now R18, which we can cram a lot of houses in there if we wanted to, would all create more traffic on 650 and going the other way, if we have to do that road up, is it called Whisper Creek, Andy? Then this assisted living facility. The people who will be operating this facility have 11 other facilities. This floor plan that we're going to use is identical to 6 of their other facilities. They're proven performers. They stay full. These guys have been in the market a long time, and they'll stay in the market a long time. As far as access from Main Street, we have been given, UDOT has given us permission or at least a commitment that they will at the least let us have 1 gated access for any emergency service vehicles off of Main Street. We're in negotiations to work out something with them that would be directly across from Burton Lane. And that would be something that would be acceptable to them. The other things as far as design, these buildings are beautiful buildings. These are 1-story buildings. They're not going to block anybody's view as much as if we were building 2-story houses. And they have asphalt roofs with standing seam metal roof on dormers. They have rock and hardy board type siding on them. They have awnings. They're a beautiful building. I am a general contractor, and I've built several of these buildings myself. It's a proven floor plan, and it'll stand the test of time. As far as people feeling misguided, I apologize to you for that. I had no conversation with any of you before you purchased those lots, but I knew when that development came in that I would no longer be able to farm my little area along with some areas on the other side of the road. I feel like Ms. Beard, it takes me 10 minutes to get across that road with a tractor. It's just not worth it to stay here, and it's not safe any longer to stay as a farmer here, so we plan to relocate to another place north of here, which is a little less busy at this time. But I can assure you that it'll be a beautiful facility. It's well thought out. I know that there's a lot of concerns about a road, and I am happy to work with the citizens as well as staff to figure out what was the best way to make a road work. I personally don't care to have a road go through there, but I do know that because of the Symphony development, that there's quite a good possibility it'll have to happen. But I am open to any suggestions that anybody would want to have at that point. Do you have any questions for me?
We probably will, so let's see if we can close this public hearing, and then we'll ask some questions. Thank you. Anybody else before we close the hearing?
Jared Olson, I live on 650. I just wanted to add, if we could do some type of stipulation or something to make sure that that facility is only, and will be only used for assisted living.
Right, thank you. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you for your participation and your input. All right, so number of issues. Kind of feel like access is one of the top ones that. Andy, can you talk to us about the necessity of a road? It sounds like Mr. Whitaker's not necessarily pushing for it, the road to connect with Whisper Creek.
Yes, I wasn't working for the city at the time this road was built, but it was stubbed in this direction. You notice there was cul-de-sacs in the other two roads. It exceeds the limit for a permanent dead-end road, so it was provided that it could be extended and provide additional access. When Whisper Creek came in, that same discussion occurred. The end of the cul-de-sac down here was left open so that a road could be brought through there. That's been the plan in some fashion since 650 South was built 30 or 40 years ago. We'll certainly take a look at it, but the length of both those dead-end roads exceeds the standard that the city has for a single access facility.
How would this change? I mean, currently it exists as a dead end, right? So how does this change that?
It makes it permanent instead of temporary situation.
Now, if it were to be developed into a cul-de-sac back then, aren't there requirements on the depth or length that a cul-de-sac can go back in? And does this exceed that?
It does, yes.
So, okay.
So the way I look at that issue is, it's not so much the connection as much as it is the type of traffic that would be on the road.
It's the connection. It's the connection.
Okay.
All of this agree.
Okay.
We're on the same page. It is the connection.
Okay.
That's why we would like a hearing about that road in a further date. Let's just take care of the zoning like we said now, and then deal with that road.
Okay, so I hear that it is important. This connection is not wanted, but what I just heard Andy say is this, as it stands, is, to use an inaccurate term, illegal. That road is too long, so you cannot put a cul-de-sac right there. It has to connect through by the city ordinance. Is that correct, Andy?
That's correct, by ordinance.
Okay.
Well, why was it approved that way? Did the Kaysville City approve it?
Because, I can try to answer that, Andy can too, but because oftentimes you will see stub roads like this throughout the city, and they sit there temporarily illegal, again, if we want to use that term. They sit there temporarily illegal in the anticipation of a future development making them legal. Does that make sense?
It does, but what if he decided not to move? What if he stayed there for the next 40 years until he died? That stub road would never
Correct.
They can't until he decides what he's gonna do. So why didn't the city approve that, knowing that he might stay there for 40 years? That seems.
So none of us were here when that was approved, but Andy, this happens often. Can you explain the thought process that goes through?
The thought process is that if we limited everybody to the length of a permanent cul-de-sac is 600 feet. So if we limited every development to only 600 feet in, that would really limit how you could develop. We can't require somebody to develop their property. We just provide for it, so when they do develop the property, everything works and comes into compliance.
And so it's the same issue with this cul-de-sac too, right? This is illegal. I mean, if technically
It exceeds the limit of a permanent dead-end road.
Okay, that's the way to say it.
Stop saying illegal.
Okay, yes, that's the way to say it, what he said.
Exceeds permanent.
So I understand the concern, but what I'm saying is we have to solve, I mean, I would like personally to solve that conundrum, and the way to do it is to put an access through. Now, if I could just explain, if we didn't do anything here, if this was not approved and it stayed residential, what I'm hearing Andy say is and let's say there are lots that are going to get put in here. The connection would be made here. There is going to be through traffic, whether it gets rezoned to HC or whether this gets redeveloped at some point in the future, and it may be for 40 years. I get that.
But it's currently an R18, so it's a number of lots there.
Yeah, you could.
And I did the math on that, FYI.
That's 15, right? So
Well,
come up with almost 16.
if you take out I just guesstimated 15% ballpark for the public right-of-way that have to get dedicated. You take it down to 12 or 13 lots.
About 13.
Yeah.
Just to remind you though, there's also, well, there's the lots up here as well, so.
Okay, so 19 lots under the current zone. So you have 19 rooftops with a through street, and I'm not a traffic engineer, Andy could maybe ballpark this, but I would guess 19 homes is going to generate more trips than this facility. Is that a good guess?
Planners use 10 trips per day per household, right?
That's the general rule of thumb for residential development is about 10 trips per day.
Is that per vehicle?
No, it's per
per home.
Per household.
Per home. We don't have enough of these kind of facilities that I have the traffic on those memorized.
Yeah, okay.
Typically, they don't generate a lot because most of the people that are there do not own cars.
So we're talking employee trips and delivery
Employees
trips.
and
Visitors.
Visitors, yeah, visitors, okay, yeah.
Is there some necessity that the proposed facility have an access to the road behind it, as far as
No,
traffic?
that's not well, we've seen the site plan.
Right, the site plan has an access.
Yeah, it doesn't show an access to that road, so the
Oh,
people
it
that
does.
are.
It shows an
Doesn't it show right
access
there?
to
Oh,
the
it does?
parking lot.
Okay.
So would it,
We don't have that
That's
requirement.
inspectable.
but it would pass our muster if that wasn't there?
That's correct, yes.
So one possibility would be to have that road go in there, but not have it be an access to the facility.
Yeah,
right?
Then
That's a
that would be
possibility.
residential
Traffic.
right?
So from fire and life safety though, what, do we have to have a second access for
with
that
the-
east side?
That's what the length of the
Depends what
cul-de-sac
kind of
is.
access UDOT will allow off of Main Street.
Sounds like they would allow
If
at
it's-
least this one plus a gated one or something, is what I heard Mr. Whitaker say.
Gary, you were here when we were
Yeah.
discussing this, and that access road, I mean, it's interesting because at that point, the public was very much in favor of having some access road, and that was a bone of contention for this area, for this lot, for this owner to have this access there, and it's interesting that it's.
Yeah, that was the discussion,
Yeah.
was that they wanted a connection.
Right, and part of it is the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In our meetings with UDOT, if it stays residential, they'll have us fence along the street, and there'll be no access at all. If it is zoned in the proposed zoning HC, they will allow at a minimum the emergency service access, which is shown there, And like I said, we're working, trying to get even less traffic off of those back roads by trying to align that, working with the lady that lives in the house that's right at the very bottom, right there. So we would hope that at least this facility would not generate much more traffic on those back roads. Again, we're just talking about the zoning there. At some future time, we do need to talk about that street, and at that point, I'm happy to.
We're talking plat questions.
As we discussed last time, we can put in
For sure.
development agreement
For sure.
conditions, right? Do you feel like your facility requires access to this back connecting road?
Actually, if UDOT will work with us, we won't even need access from the back.
And you'd be okay
you
not
guys
having it?
probably know UDOT's not the easiest group to deal with. And so they will probably require some sort of a rear access. We
your
for sure
facility,
will
as
never
far as
make
you're
any
concerned.
tie between the two, because that would become a thoroughfare. So
So is that a right-in, right-out that the UDOT has said you would get?
that's right.
And so if I heard you correctly, if this stays residential, there is no access, this is fenced.
There's no access at all. Every bit of traffic will then go out and go one way or the other.
They'll come out here, and so what that says to me, I think this is a reasonable assumption, that says to me that the residential use would generate more trips. They don't want that many trips coming onto Main Street. They want to push those trips up into here, and so this
Absolutely.
is my guess. I think it's a reasonable guess.
Yeah, when we approved the Symphony Homes subdivision, that was one of the big issues. UDOT would not allow access from Main Street into that. That's why they've got that cul-de-sac with that large lot that borders the property, was because they wouldn't allow that access. So Mr. Whitaker's right. They will not allow access out of there, and that's where that discussion came with a through road in there and at some future point. And I remember somebody saying, oh, that'll never happen because Mr. Whitaker will never, ever sell that property.
Ever.
And ever.
Here we are.
And so here we are. So to address a couple concerns that I heard about transparency, a couple of us been up here for quite a while and gone through a lot of the stuff, and Symphony Home has been really good with their subdivisions when they've come in. And I believe they did not have any idea or any knowledge that anything would ever happen. And even the residents are saying that'll never sell. He'll never develop that. So in the city, it's not our responsibility we had nothing to disclose, and so from our standpoint, there was no need for transparency because we did not have any knowledge, and I don't believe Symphony Home had it either. So I think that they're the victims of circumstances, because I heard that from several people.
I believe that is wrong.
And how so?
He said that 20, 30 years ago that road was proposed.
Okay,
Therefore, if Symphony knew that road was proposed, they should have disclosed that to these.
Okay, we're talking a couple different things. We're talking the access in that road versus the development. The concepts, or the things we heard, were the development that precipitates those.
Let me interject a little bit. I think we have to be clear. If there are representations made as to what will happen there or what will not happen there, it didn't come from the city.
Yeah.
And if Symphony Homes is making representations or the owners are making representations, then that's on them and that's on the people who rely on them. So it's not as though the city has said, there will be a road here or there will not be a road here, there will be a development here, there will not be development. There are private parties here that make representations, and that's a different story, but.
Well, and back to the transparency, hang on a minute, back to the transparency issue, and again, it's wasn't our job or responsibility. There was discussion about that at the time, so it did come up. There was discussion about it, and so the belief was that it probably wouldn't happen. Circumstances change. He's decided to sell. So I think it's wrong to accuse any party of not being transparent.
I'm not necessarily accusing, I'm just saying
So
that cul-de-sac was temporary.
Yeah, for 16 years.
Therefore, if you look at that, there will be a road.
Well, how long, Mr. Olson, how long have you lived here?
I've lived in Kaysville 7 years.
Okay, all right. I want to get back on really the rezone issue versus the plat issue that we're back on. I remember when Mr. Hansen came in a few years ago for the thing, I was opposed. I actually opposed the project initially. Then it came back to us again.
So you were here for that?
Yeah, I was here for that.
Was anybody else? Just, sorry.
Were you here, Betty?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, I think you
Okay.
guys, because that was 3 years
Okay.
ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I was here for that.
I didn't believe that it fit the general plan. I thought that development didn't fit the general plan in a residential setting, and I felt that there was a better spot for that to be. So I opposed it initially. Then it came back, and he brought back in, if I remember right, the renderings of it, and I changed my tone on that. And I think that actually has been an asset. It's hidden in it. I think it was nicely done. We did set some requirements and conditions upon that development to conform to the neighborhood and to make it look residential. And you hardly notice it when you drive by, but when you do look at it, it's a beautiful structure. It's a beautiful thing. And I lived for 23 years, just a couple blocks from there, and I didn't see an increase in traffic. One of the concerns, I will express a concern I have with the one across the street, though. Again, I still have a concern, does it fit the general plan to have a development of that size? I think that the other option is to leave it where it's at into residential, and this is where it gets interesting for me, because I think if we go residential in there and leave the existing zone, I tend to believe, based on the stuff that we've seen, that it would increase the traffic flow through those neighborhoods going in the back. I think that if and we haven't seen a rendering of it again, because that's not part of what we're doing here, but if it's built as represented and built anything like the other one, and the conditions are set upon that, I think it could be a nice amenity and enhancement to the area. I struggle a little bit, though, if it does conform to the general plan, something of that size. I've heard it's 60 beds. How many square feet would that structure end up being?
It's about 44,000 feet.
Okay. So right now, when I saw this originally, I'm still kind of weighing on it, and it's been enlightening tonight to hear a lot of the stuff. I was picturing like a Legacy or something that's a 2 or 3 or 4 story structure, but a single story, that settles a lot of my concerns I have. That's all I have at this time.
You have something you'd like to say?
Well, I have a solution to the whole thing. And it's rather simplistic. But, where these symphony homes have been built, for the 31 years that I've lived on 650 South, that's been an open field. And the only use for that field has been our children using that for sleigh riding for 31 years. That's it. Consequently, when they build homes above that, they put a fence in across there where the entrance is to, what's it called, Whisper Creek? There was a fence across there. Now, I've seen other neighborhoods in Kaysville, and you would know probably better where they are than I. But where they actually put barricades so nobody could move through that area, just because of the increased traffic that would incur on those neighborhoods. So what I would propose is that we would do just that. That way that stub road could continue over the cul-de-sac, and the only impact would be the 10 or 15 homes is in that
So you're talking up at the top of the development.
That's correct.
There used to be a fence right there that went along that road. It ended at just before you can drive in there. That's correct.
Yeah, right there.
Big, huge, probably 8-foot fence. You can
It
even
was a
see it there.
10-foot fence, right, Dave?
It was a good fence.
Sounds like you ran into it once or twice. So, okay, I understand what you're saying there. From again, I come back to the public and life safety for fire and ambulance and police. If they have one access into that, how does that work?
They've had one access into 650 South for 31 years.
Andy, do you have something you want to say?
Yes. Again, what we're focused on tonight is the rezone of the property.
Right.
In your staff report, you'll notice, as quoted, the provisions for the healthcare district, just at the top of the second page. And this is taken almost word for word out of the Fair Housing Act.
Right.
It says we have to make reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities. What we need to look at is about the second or third sentence in there. It says the rezone to healthcare district will be approved if a development agreement is approved by the developer and the city council. Development agreement shall be in effect before the zone is effective. It's a lot easier with my glasses on, sorry. And the zone shall be voided if the agreement or if the provider of the residential care facility fails to comply with the development agreement. So I think where we're at tonight is if there's an inclination that this would be approved, or even if you approve it, it's subject to the development agreement being approved as well. The development agreement will address the issues of access, it'll address the issues of look, it'll address the issues of lighting, it'll address virtually every issue that's been discussed. So it's been a good discussion, so we know what needs to be looked at in that development agreement. But at this point, we don't have the development agreement. We don't have the for sure site plan, which would be an integral part of that development agreement.
Right, we have a rendering that people are making speculation, wide-eyed speculation off of that's true, false, it's nothing. This is nothing.
It's a pretty picture that gives us an
Yeah, it's a
idea of
pretty
what it could
picture.
look
It's not
like.
even suitable for framing on your refrigerator, so, I mean, it's.
So I'm suggesting that we get back to the rezone, determine if this is a compatible use. Again, the number 2 in that same section says accommodations for people with disabilities shall be approved if they're found to be necessary and reasonable. I think Mr. Whitaker could explain the necessary to us. The other owner of the healthcare facility, sorry, I forgot his name, and
Mr. Hansen.
I think we just need to determine if this is a reasonable use at this property at this point, and then we can progress down towards the development agreement and address many of these concerns which are being discussed tonight in much better detail than we're prepared to at this point.
Okay, and we don't have to say what's in that development agreement, just.
Not at this point.
No, because we don't have it.
Well, we've had a lot of things
It would be
discussed.
good if you could give us maybe
don't
some
have
list
to
of
be-
items that you'd like us to address so we know where to start. I think we've heard them.
One thing we may not have heard that was brought up to me by a resident was the possibility of a fence between the healthcare facility, so along their border from the subdivision, you know?
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
That's usually required, we often do that when we're changing a zone, right? I mean, we can require the fence.
Yes.
It's a different use.
Especially
Be a
if
wall,
it's deemed a
landscape.
non-compatible use in the
Right.
adjacent property.
So the question is, do we have, do we want to put a list of things that we would want the city to consider in a development agreement? Or is it something that, obviously the staff's here, heard this, knows the list already?
You can give a list if you choose to. We've been sitting here as long as you have.
Yeah. Emery's still awake and she's got all the stuff taken care of. Got all the notes. Yep.
Because that way we could add more. If we say them now, maybe we would be limited.
Likely, it could be appropriate if it's the desire of the Planning Commission that once a draft development agreement's created, prior to forwarding that to the City Council for their review, the Planning Commission could look at it, and then you would have more to base your final recommendation on for the City Council.
I think that makes sense.
So then if we're going, if we're back to just the rezone question, we can try as we might to make it an objective decision, but it is inherently a subjective legislative call. And so
By the City Council.
Correct, yeah, but we are recommending what should be done with that subjective decision, right? And so where we traditionally start, and maybe end, is with the general plan, and the general plan is just intentionally vague. And so I look at it and I read some things. One of the goals and policies in the general plan for identity and character is Kaysville should be primarily a residential community with a vision to promote business, industry, and public use. So that one isn't very helpful. And then I see in growth and development, still under goals and policies, it says encourage businesses, and admittedly, I'm not reading everything. It just says that I see the applicable things. Encourage businesses and industries to locate and invest within the city. Regulate the more intensive uses that create traffic and public service problems and costs. And then I guess one other thing related to business and industry. Most sites used primarily for business or industry should be located on major streets. Mitigate impacts on adjacent residential uses through compliance with ordinances and regulations. So I guess the last few in my mind are a little more helpful in the sense that we have established goals to encourage business to come here as long as we do it right. And I think there is a potential to make it a win-win. No side should be completely pleased, in my opinion, at the outcome of this. They should both have to give and take, but I think personally that there is an opportunity to mitigate as many concerns of the neighborhood as possible while still bringing in something that is needed in the community, in my opinion. There's an aging population. The one across the street sounds like it's being relatively successful. Apple Tree, which is over by the really, I guess, Ben Franklin. I was going to say the old Bowmans, but Banyans, sorry, excuse me. Apple Tree, I think, is it's in a near a residential neighborhood. I don't know that there's been a lot of concerns about Apple Tree, and I think it's relatively full. And it's not even on a main street. So I think, what'd they say?
Ugly.
Oh, it's ugly. Yeah, I totally agree, but I think what Andy is saying is there is an opportunity to address those concerns. One of them would be, in my opinion, I don't think the people above this want to look down on rooftop units. I think this sounds like there would not be any flat portions of this roof, but that is something that can be addressed in a development agreement. So on the rezone question, I'm inclined to recommend the City Council approve it.
So with our motion then, to approve the rezone, the development agreement is what?
Well,
is it word for word? I mean, are we going to actually do that?
We can just suggest that the staff follow address the issues that
have been dictated
brought up
tonight
here.
in our meeting.
And
or we can list them or both, right?
I think what Andy's saying, though, at least, and from what I guess my perspective, whether Andy was saying this or not, Chapter 17-17, which is the Healthcare District Code, essentially mandates that a development agreement be entered into. That's not a subjective thing. We have to do it by the code.
No, that's word.
But what gets in it?
Well, and what I'm saying is, so what gets in it is, we're going to have this whole discussion all over again. And so we can put things in now for sure. I'm just saying we're going to go through this all over again at that stage.
Yeah, I think this is a whole lot different than the one we just did.
Yes.
the
And
RA to the R114, because this is specifically healthcare.
Right.
And so it's not as subjective from a development standpoint as the previous one. So I personally, I don't think at this point we really need to do much.
No.
Because it's going to come before us, and it's not going to have a different use.
And again, I've already said what I think about the rezone, but as to the concerns that have been addressed, I agree with many, if not most of them. I think the site plan is, the site planner in me does not like it for many reasons. I don't know what it's going to look like. I think we do want to have a lot of architectural control, and in many cases we don't have that, say in general commercial, but with this case where there's a development agreement required, we get to have that control. And we get to have the site plan control, because I think that's required by the code too.
It is. The site plan is required, and a site plan shall be submitted.
Right.
And all permitted conditional uses.
So we get to have a lot of control over it. It's just at the broad question of rezone, I think it's on a main road. I think it's that road and 200 North are the two busiest roads in Kaysville. So if something like this is going to go somewhere, it's got to be on those roads. The contrary to that is it's a busy road, so why would we want to put more traffic on it? And the answer, in my opinion, to that is this is going to be less traffic than the current zone would allow, which is 19 or 13 residential units with 10 trips per day. So
was that a motion?
it was a very, no.
Did you get all that? We've got a
question
final
that I don't
still.
think we addressed was, is that considered a commercial building or no?
Yeah, what would be the type? I guess that's a later question, but
It's considered a healthcare building.
Healthcare, yeah, it's its own thing.
It's actually considered residential.
Residence or any other commercial buildings on the
No.
south.
This is
south of
a
Kaysville.
residential care facility. Hence, it is a residential, that's the key word, yes.
I could add that in several other cities, they have allowed these in a residential zoning with a conditional use. However, Kaysville City's ordinance does not allow that.
That's correct.
One time we ran into a tough time with it, and there's a federal law that has the mandate, that mandates that these ADA type people need to be offered housing in a residential area.
well, and I think the answer to that, I think the reason why there is no conditional use is because we have the inherent power by that federal statute, which I assume, or state, I don't know which one it is, which is incorporated into our code, that tells us we get to put any number of conditions we want with a development agreement. So that's why there's no need for a conditional use.
There's another.
I'll make
Do you have a short comment?
Two comments that may not sway it one way or the other. One is, one of the nuggets that.
Do you want to come up here? Thanks.
Yeah, one of the nuggets that I heard Josh mention was that in the plan, you were reading from the plan, talked about having access from main roads, and I think that would be a considerable benefit, in my view, if we could assure that there's access off Main Street. More than just the driveway, that the main access for this facility was off of Main Street. The other point I wanted to make, that as far as ADA, we do in our neighborhood have a gentleman that's wheelchair bound, head injury, that lives in a home in our neighborhood that's ADA compliant, single story. So we're all familiar with the conditions required to help him have a successful life too. It can happen in single versus, so I guess my point is that needn't make the decision for you.
Thank you. I think this has been expressed already, at least implied, if not expressly said. The City Council is the ultimate decider of this question, both the rezone and then what would come after the development agreement. And so there's more to come. We're just recommending what the City Council should do. There's going to be a meeting just like this where you'll all get to say the same things to the City Council and then some. So welcome back when you come back.
And just like Mr. Whitaker said, it's not a city road, it's a state road. Right?
Main Street.
Main Street is
Right.
the state road, and so they have to
Well, this portion of
give
Main
their
Street,
approval.
it transitions later, but right.
I think we're ready for motion. I think the only question is whether we're going to talk about some specificity with the development agreement or just let the staff.
Say we leave it.
My personal opinion is that it's premature and all the concerns are going to get addressed when we have to go through the development agreement again, if we are recommending approval.
Right. Okay, so make a motion. Somebody?
I will move that we grant, that we recommend rezone of 2.84 acres of property at approximately from R18, single-family residential, to the HC Healthcare Zoning District for Mr. Dave Whitaker at 701 South Main Street, with the stipulation that a site plan being required as per 1717-2 and the aforementioned issues and things that came up dictated will be addressed by city staff.
In the development agreement.
In the development agreement.
Yeah. I'll second. Aye.
Can you say we object, or there was this final? I'm sorry.
So we're just making the motion, we're making the motion, and then it'll go before the city council, and you'll have a chance to express your opinion there too, so.
And the city council could say the planning commission is dead wrong, or right, or something in between, so.
I just kind of thought maybe there were some premature things that, some more things that need to be
Did you vote?
worked out for that, but that's just.
Aye.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you'll have more opportunity, yeah. Aye.
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 Aye. Uh-oh. Wouldn't want that. Okay. All right, again, thank you for all your participation. Item number 6, public hearing and preliminary and final plat approval for Hill Farms subdivision Phase 2C amended at 2002 West Phillips Street and 554 North Hill Farms Lane, destination homes.
Could you guys please carry on your conversation outside, please? Thank you. We're still carrying on our meeting.
Andy, do you want to give us a little,
Yes, sir.
just get close to the mic?
Okay.
That's better.
Out in the Hill Farm subdivision, Phase 2C and 3, there's a couple lots that the adjacent property owners would like to adjust the common boundary between the two lots. Originally, this is how the lots were platted. The request is to move this property line here, take this field in the back and attach it to the home on Phillip Street rather than the home on the new home in the subdivision. So the request is just take the line here and move it over to this area, making the modification. You see the new plat does that, moves the line over here, leaves the original line was back here, so it makes this the big lot, and this lot's similar to the other lots on that street. Both lots still very much in compliance based on the type of subdivision it is, so we'd recommend preliminary and final plat approval for this lot line adjustment.
Thank you. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone here to address this item? Okay.
And there is the representative. He asked if we could have maybe an hour recess and then a 2-hour public hearing.
We'll get some people to attend. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Just get anybody's fire?
No, this is just a simple lot line adjustment.
I make a motion that we recommend
Oh, I
approval
love
of
it.
preliminary and final plat subdivision amendment for Phase 2C for destination homes at 2002 West Phillip Street, Lot 248 and Lot 317.
Second.
Aye.
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 Very good. Okay.
That's another one of those ones I think could be handled at the staff level, but that's my own opinion.
We're working on that.
Okay.
Next. Final plat approval for Parkwood Phase 3 subdivision at approximately 35 West Shepherd Lane for Henry Walker Homes.
Actually, sorry, Brock's for this one. He wasn't for the last one. Familiar with Parkwood subdivision located on the south end of town. It's been under construction for some time. Phase 1 over here has been all constructed and homes are going in rapidly. Phase 2 is approved and is now under construction. Their request now is for Phase 3. They'd like to follow Phase 2 right into Phase 3. This is the preliminary plat showing the phases. Phase 3 is identical to what was shown on the preliminary plat. The engineering's been completed, it's in good order. This is ready for final plat approval. The only minor issue is this little strip across the top. Rather than be incorporated into lots, has been at the request of the sewer district, deeded to the sewer district. They have their main trunk line that runs through that property, and they would like to own that to be able to maintain that trunk line. So again, we're ready to recommend final plat approval since it is in compliance with the zoning and the preliminary plat.
So that very last statement you said about the ownage of the sewer, can you tell me again, can you repeat that part
We
again?
usually don't allow little remnant parcels, but where this is going to the sewer district, makes sense for them to own it since their trunk line runs through
Talking about
property.
the piece that goes all the way across?
This little strip across the top, yes.
Okay. Little teeny, it's not the big wide band, it's the little strip.
This one right here.
Yeah.
So Jack Fisher, rather than let that be a part of the lot and make it an easement, just worked with the sewer district? Okay.
Yeah, they preferred ownership.
Yeah.
Again, that's their trunk line. It serves pretty much all of Farmington City. So if there's a problem, they don't want to be worried about what's going on in somebody's backyard. They want to be able to access the property immediately.
There's a lot of, what's the engineering term for it? Effectuated sludge or something like that? Going through that line, this is what we're saying.
Yeah.
That's probably not the right term, but it was something like that.
Sounded good.
Description.
I think it's pretty much a slam dunk, right?
Okay.
I'll move that we grant final plat approval for Parkwood Phase 3 subdivision for Jack Fisher Capital at approximately West 35 Shepherd Lane.
Second it. Aye.
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 Aye. I have a question. Scout's on, it won't be long. If you go back to the aerial, I think this developer, one of the representatives that came in earlier, we had talked about this big right-of-way that's being preserved. Now that the final EIS for the West Davis corridor came through, I do not, the way I read it, see a connection at Shepherd, and so this may just be, it may still be a right-of-way developed in the future, but not nearly what it was going to be? Is that what your understanding is, Andy?
This will not be the primary corridor. What they're showing on their their environmental document is potential for at some point an interchange down in this vicinity. We think that makes some sense just to give access to that freeway. Farmington is pushing very hard to have a road that would connect that interchange up to Shepherd Lane on I-15 as a connecting road between the two facilities.
But not an interchange at Shepherd Lane? Or is Farmington, is that what Farmington's looking
With
for?
an interchange at Shepherd Lane. So it would connect the I-15 interchange at Shepherd to the West Davis corridor interchange in this vicinity.
Okay, so
But it would be a surface road, likely a city street when it was completed.
yeah, but I guess, so that's a separate, it was in my understanding, it was previously in the discussion for the West Davis corridor plan, but now it's not necessarily tied to that latest recommendation with the final EIS, but it's still possible.
Originally, this was a 300-foot corridor
Yeah.
with the main line freeway going through it. It's now a surface street that
Got it.
2, 3, maybe 4 lanes.
Yeah, that was just my curiosity, so.
So we'll preserve the corridor. A lot of it's in open space with the subdivision until a final determination on that connecting road has been accomplished.
Yeah.
Okay. I have one little item to bring up, if it's time for that.
Well, are
Yes, no?
we off the item? Are we
Oh,
off the
sorry.
agenda here?
I think we're done with that one, yeah. Sorry. I derailed us.
Yeah, you did. I'm not letting Maureen do it.
It's good.
Okay. Is it something you want to address before we get to number 8, Lorraine?
Oh, no, we can
Oh,
wait
yeah.
till after that.
Okay.
I didn't see those signs you're gonna put up, Stroh.
Yeah.
I was, I know, I
It was
didn't
a
have,
weak
it
campaign.
was a weak campaign, I know.
I was waiting for my button.
I know. It's, I had all kinds of stuff made up, but apparently it fell flat.
I was waiting for something like Rustin Jessen over here on these.
I know, I was gonna have,
Yeah.
yes, it was gonna be, it was grandiose. And yeah,
It's all the printers, so we're still
it all,
waiting.
yeah, and it's still
Okay.
now, so, right.
So I've had some thought about this. We have, I think when I first got around here, there was not really any direction or tradition. Andy, I'd like for you to chime in, Anne-Marie, as to how we did this and to who would get elected. And then at some point, we kind of decided, hey, maybe we should just do this as seniority goes. And I'm not sure we're bound by that either, so.
The bylaws for the planning commission have no requirement other than that the chair and vice chair be elected once a year. It's been done on typically the first meeting in July because that's when terms expire. So it allows the new people to be on, and I don't know if it states that in the bylaws or not, but that's when the year expires. There is nothing that says the existing chairperson cannot serve more than one term. There's no term limitations on chair and vice chair. There's no requirement of who, so it's just open to nominations. I don't know that you're allowed to decline a nomination unless you have a good reason. So it's just open
You wanna do it again?
to anybody.
Is that what you're
at-
saying?
No, I'm willing. Betty, are you?
I'm willing, but I don't,
No, if you, no, that, the way we've been doing it is seniority based and stuff, and that's, I mean, I'm totally fine with that, so.
And I am too. I just, at some point down the road, I want the commission to be able to make a decision based on what's best, rather than just be locked into anything, but
Well,
I'm
that's-
happy for Betty. I think Betty would be best, so I'm happy for that.
Yeah. Well, at some point, somebody's gonna drop off, and then it's gonna break the chain probably anyway,
Yeah.
but.
Right.
well, because if mayor here, you would miss.
I'm not up for a while still.
Right, but you'd break the chain, is what he's saying.
Oh. I just go out of the chain and my heart stays here.
Yeah, right.
We could put nominations in a hat and just draw.
Well, that doesn't sound very smart. Get somebody we like, or,
Roll the dice.
yeah.
Well, we like all of us.
I mean, I think.
Probably
we
the
all-
biggest tradition is the guy that doesn't show up gets railroaded.
Oh, Tom,
Tom.
that's what I was thinking. Oh, he's too new.
That's what we did, you weren't here when you were
Yes.
nominated.
That's what I thought.
But you'd been the vice chair, hadn't you, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been the vice chair, Betty.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Look, she's got a double layer.
Oh, yeah, the double layer
I know
sign.
you've hit big time.
It's so you can hide behind it.
Yeah.
Right, so you have to decide what you want to do.
And you're gonna do vice.
Yeah, I'll do vice, sure.
Well, then, I will nominate Betty to be chair, and can I nominate Stroh too? And, okay.
Oh, I'll second Betty Parker as chair.
Okay. Aye.
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 How could you say no, right?
No.
Betty, no. Okay, I'll nominate Stroh to be vice chair.
I'll second that.
You, Stroh.
Oh, aye.
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 Okay, that's it.
Excellent.
Now, other matters. Lorraine, is this where you want to?
Do you want to do the call to the
I'd call to
public?
the public first.
We haven't went public, I think.
Do you want to, would you like to address the commission on another item? Okay.
Okay.
Call to public is closed.
Okay, so I just, the redo on the road over there, wow, that was a cloudy.
200?
Yes,
Yeah.
200 and also Flint, right? So I just wanted to find out, when they redid Maine, it was nice because they striped to make it, to conform to some of our goals and plans with the active transportation. We got some more space on the shoulders there, make it a little safer for people cycling, and I was wanting to remember what is in the works, what are we doing with these redos? We're supposed to, as we redo roads, that's our opportunity to put some of those facilities and changes and stripes in.
With the new surface on that portion of Second North, we're looking at converting it to the 5-lane section that it's designed to be, which doesn't accommodate a whole bunch of active transportation. That won't allow a separate bike lane. We will look at what the plan calls for and see how much of it we can accommodate. I think it was a shared road type system there.
Was it? I couldn't remember exactly, but I just wanted to
So
make
good
sure
reminder
we're,
for that portion.
So
of it.
then on the, going west, once you pass the trail, wasn't that the area that's going to be widened? That's not happening with
Yeah.
this that we're doing right now, is it?
That
Isn't that still in the works?
contract's been awarded. It will start this year. We're still
Okay.
wrapping up the right-of-way on it. Whether we stripe it all the way to Angel Street as 5 lanes, we're still looking at that, if we need to do that now or if that can wait a few years.
Oh, okay, so that's still a couple years out then, a few years out?
I'm really happy with the job that was done on Crestwood.
yeah.
That impacts me directly, so I mean, but yeah. I thought they were gonna leave it asphalt and then they tarred and gravelled it,
Well,
so.
the type of treatment they're doing, it's a chip seal.
Yeah.
It's what we did on Fairfield a year ago. They'll come back in about a week or two and put another layer of asphalt, not asphalt, but tar over the top.
Right.
And it lays it down really flat, and so after it gets a month worth of traffic, it's a very smooth surface.
Right.
So don't complain yet.
No, I'm not. I'm not. It's
You're not,
a
but
huge
some-
improvement from what it
some
was.
people have.
Yeah, it is a huge
Yeah.
And-
Let me clarify that.
And will it be striped? Will
Crestwood?
Crestwood be striped?
Probably just a center line, if anything.
Probably just a center line there, so still really nothing designated for bikes.
Well, and what we've been asked to do is design and put together plans to be considered probably in the spring. So it's on there in the consideration, but we don't have the specifics and any
We did-
budgeted money, I guess, towards anything
Lyle
just
took a
yet.
list of all the roads that were being redone this year and compared them to the active transportation plan.
Uh-huh.
And we'll incorporate the striping in.
Yeah, so as of now, hopefully a spring striping project will take place with anything that's recently been resurfaced with any necessary striping to coordinate with that plan.
To accommodate, yeah. I mean, that's the least expensive improvement we do, is just to stripe it to be,
Right.
to accommodate.
And hopefully part of the timing on it, the paint will last longer than it has done on Fairfield, so.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
All right. When's our next?
Reports, correspondence calendar.
We're at the 27th, is that right?
It's 20. Correct, yeah, I don't have any other items, just in 2 weeks on the 27th is our next scheduled meeting.
All right. July 27th.
So when does Betty's term start?
Today, right now.
Next meeting.
Next week.
You can go
Next
ahead and
meeting.
adjourn this meeting.
So she gets to adjourn us.
All right.
Yeah.
As your last action, I think there's a
All right, let's.
there's a gavel in the drawer. If it makes
Yeah, actually, that's
There's
should
a
be your
gavel.
last action. Hey, you got it.
Adjourn.
Awesome. Nice work.
You go out with
All
this.
right.
Out with a bang.
That's the only time